Are you here to see the sights?
No. Podcast. Welcome, everyone, to Super Audio Robo Podcast Z. I'm Ark, that's Neff, and this is the show where we recommend you the finest mecha content for your cultural and artistic development.
And hopefully by now we have raised your cultural level up a bit from all our recommendations.
Yeah, most of them for super robots, admittedly. But that's why we're going towards a real robot this time.
The most real robot, in fact.
Arguably, yes. Yeah, you're not wrong. We're talking about Patlabor, everyone. Specifically, Mobile Police Patlabor, the early days. Because I figured if we were going to single out a particular entry in this semi-large franchise, though not large enough to get its own overview episode like we did for, other notable examples, kind of like the big OVA from the late 80s was probably like the best option to go with.
Yeah, because otherwise we'd be covering a show that is over, I think, let's say 60 episodes long or more than that.
Yeah, the TV series is its all can of worms. Yeah, so might as well get into our synopsis, explain to people what the fuck a Patlabor is.
Yeah, please do.
Here's our plot overview, our synopsis. With the rapid development of hypertechnology came the Labor, a multi-purpose humanoid construction machine whose use spread into almost every field. However, this gave rise to a new threat to society, labor crime. As such, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police founded the Special Vehicles Section 2 within the Security Division to combat these ever-growing crimes. This was the beginning of the SV2 patrol labor units, known as Patlabor. These are the stories.
Yeah,
I may or may not put the Law and Order musical sting in this as a joke. I'm not sure.
Listen, I think it would fit. This is a
I guess.
Maybe. Who knows? I would watch a Law and Order.
I mean, there was the temptation to just do like a full-on parody of the fucking opening narration in any Law and Order episode. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that joke's already been done by plenty of people elsewhere. So I just settled on, here's the funny thing. What I actually just read off there, that is actually the opening narration you get at the start of just about every OVA episode of Patlabor.
I was about to say, I was like, wait, you just copied that word for words. I mean, it tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, it works. It tells you everything. It probably doesn't tell you about the part that, like, the SV2 is effectively the mecha pilot equivalent of the Keystone Cops. Or, I don't know, maybe that's a bit too harsh. They're a bit more competent than that. They're still misfits. It's like, they're like the mecha police predecessors to like super troopers, I think might be more accurate.
I think that works. Yeah, these are a bunch of weirdos who are a team, basically.
Just going through solving crimes related to giant robots. Because, you introduce that into modern society, people are going to find all kinds of ways to ruin it for everyone.
That's really it. I mean, like, you had arcs where they try to explore more deeper societal issues and all that, but otherwise, it's kind of a sitcom most of the time.
Yeah, part sitcom, part police procedural, except even the police procedural part is, like, not anywhere close, I feel, to, like, half of any episode's, like, kind of format, really.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of prehistory to go through, so would you mind taking it away?
Yeah, because Patlabor is a franchise that is stacked in terms of, like, creatives involved in it from its inception, because Patlabor, as a general franchise, not even just the early days, which is the main topic at hand, was created by a 5-person group of mangaka known as Headgear, which, if you ever look up any details about Headgear, especially like their logo, it is unsurprisingly like, it's called Headgear because like the icon they use is like the police headgear that the Patlabor units wear when they're on the job. It makes sense. But the whole idea behind this particular group, it was a group formed with the idea of giving a space for its members to create their own works and like maintain full copyright ownership of them, like on the individual person level. The reason like you see so many different entries in the Patlabor franchise and the fact that it's coming from like so many different like companies when you look at it, that is because like Headgear itself are the original owners and are essentially soliciting pitches out to larger production houses that might want to foot the bill for bringing it to life. So the core members of Headgear, who said that it was a 5-person group, those 5 people are Masami Yuki, Yutaka Izubuchi, Kazunori Ito, Akemi Takeda, and Mamoru Oshii. In terms of contributions, they all bring some pretty important contributions to Patlabor overall. Masami Yuki, I think, for the most part, has basically been associated with the original manga because in addition to anime properties, you gotta also have like a manga that's ongoing. And inadvertently, because of how mangaka schedules tend to go, it always goes on for way longer than the original schedule for the anime that is meant to go simultaneous. The original Patlabor manga that Masami Yuki worked on went from 1988 to 1994.
Yeah, which is quite a bit of time spent on a manga.
Yeah, that was it was basically ended 1 year after they did their second Patlabor movie, for context.
Jeez.
But as far as anime goes, Mamoru Oshii was the director for pretty much all episodes of the early days, save for one, and its subsequent 2 movies. The latter of which I think are very clearly more indicative of his particular style. I mean, the name itself, anyone that is like knowledgeable in general of like the greater history of anime and like the really big hits that have like left a lot of influence, it's the fucking director of Ghost in the Shell. The movie that was like, it was basically his biggest break as an anime director. And you look at the Patlabor movies for context, it's no surprise how those would kind of ultimately lead into Ghost in the Shell. In terms of like their vibe and production.
And for you real anime sickos out there, he also directed the Urusei Yatsura movies, which are kind of the opposite of the Ghost of the Shell movies.
I think he also did a Lupin the Third movie, which I think ended up being a thorn in his side for so many years because of how much he was trying to get out of the shadow of that movie.
I believe that movie that movie was so weird and different from Lupin that it turned into Angel's Egg, a completely different movie altogether.
Wild career the man has had, and that's already on top of the fact that like he already has his life work in the form of the Kerberos saga. Fucking Jinro, for anyone that remembers that.
Yeah.
But the other 3 members, their contributions were still just as important. Mecha designs were handled by Yutaka Izubuchi, character designs by Akemi Takeda, and probably second in importance ultimately like to Mamoru Oshii was screenplays done by Kazunori Ito. So like all like the scripts and like plot write-outs being done for the OVAs and both movies. 5 people, pretty important roles, even with with the rest of the core production being done at like other studios, which in the case of the OVA was done by Studio Dean, if I recall correctly.
Thanks. So.
Yeah. So like all these guys got together, made this company, decided to put together a police procedural slice of life robot cop show that was very clearly, as you could tell, a product of the real robot craze that like dominated like throughout the 80s. Although with what we have described, it is clear that Patlabor was conceived to take the idea of real robots in a much different direction compared to what had already been established as like the popular kind of genre conventions for real robots. Gundam, this is not.
Yeah.
Like that is the best way you could summarize it. This is not Gundam. This is not a war story.
No, like you said, this is not Gundam. Like around this time, a lot of real robot shows are a lot war focused, a lot grittier. This is the opposite of gritty.
This is more about mundanity and like what the presence of real robots of this type would be like if they were to be introduced into like a more modern type of society. Like as our synopsis already describes, like these were robots initially created for the purpose of like heavy construction work or whatever, like very heavy manual labor that would be too much even for just a normal human to do. That's why they're called labors. And of course, like the technology would be too practical and useful that all other fields would want to get in on it, including police and yes, military. Obviously, the military would adopt it, but like our focus is not on soldiers that get to pilot robots. It's just regular working people. In a kind of stiff bureaucratic system, and obviously showing that there are obvious consequences that would spiral out of control from introducing such powerful technology into the working force.
The series does also like go into the topic of war, but it's never the focus. It's like maybe an episode or two, or maybe like 3 or 4 arcs or whatever at most.
Yeah, like with that idea, Patlabor was initially conceived with like the goal of like basically doing like 2 type of entries first. One was obviously the manga that would run for the 6 years as mentioned, and an OVA miniseries, because in a lot of ways, with how Patlabor's format is designed, it's kind of ideal for the OVA setup where the goal is that you just want to provide a vignette of like a much larger series without having to like make like a very like tightly woven like single long running narrative. You can basically have just a series with something like Patlabor where it's just a collection of like cases or other random events detailing like this is what goes on in the lives of these like weirdo dysfunctional police robot pilots.
Don't go into this thinking you're getting a long running narrative, because you are not.
And like with that kind of initial goal, obviously like if it took off and got popular, that meant that Headgear would have a lot more leverage to kind of pitch to larger companies to get funding for additional projects, such as an entire TV anime that would run for 47 episodes, along with like a quote-unquote OVA called The New Files that would contain, I think, like 16 additional episodes, which I'm pretty sure were a case of like they already had them in the production pipeline, but someone along the way came and be like, bro, you've been on TV for too long. You need to stop. Because that's what it felt like. And then obviously that's not getting into the fact that, movies would eventually come down the pipeline, because it's like, if this thing's popular, you got to go bigger. It's like first the TV series. Now you got to make a movie. That's where the real money is. And, when you watch those movies, production wise, yeah, you could really tell that a lot of money was spent on those.
Oh, the movies, like, I think we might have differing opinions on, like, the first 2 movies, but they're gorgeous to look at.
I think first film specifically, we're probably closer on agreement on, if we're being honest.
Yeah, first film is...
I think that's the one movie that still feels the most like Patlabor at its soul.
Yeah, I feel like it's the second movie, because we could both agree the third movie is a piece of garbage.
Oh yeah, I mean like no one from Headgear was like in charge, even on a directorial level. I don't even think like on a screenplay level for that matter.
Yeah, it's not Patlabor. It is literally like a movie they just stapled onto Patlabor, and it's bad.
Yeah, there was quite a lot of Patlabor, the stuff that's out there with the Patlabor name on it. And yet, despite all this, like to my knowledge, for such a distinct, wonderful giant robot series, still never found its way into Super Robot Wars.
I think it has, actually.
Wait, has it? At least if it has, then at least probably not any of like the really big mainline games that you would think.
Oh yeah, no.
I imagine it would probably.
It was in OE. It's one of the 3D Super Robot Wars.
Oh, that's just the real B or C tier games.
Yeah.
Which I think that still surprises me all the same, considering that this is the kind of group of people that feels like least qualified to be like wrapped up in a crossover event that requires them to save the known universe. But how amazing would that be, though?
It would still be great. I wish they could get their chance to be in one, just so we can see how they'd interact with everybody else.
Oh man, Ota would just have like a giant fucking erection at like some of the massive weapons being fired.
He'd look like at heavy arms and just like pass out from just ecstasy or whatever.
So yes, that's just the general overview that we could give right now as far as the the major media that Patlabor has seen, and also like there is a new Patlabor anime in the works that's going to come out next year, Patlabor Easy Y. Which we can at least say headgear's involved, as you'd expect, and a lot of the same key members are there. I think the only exception is Mamoru Oshii, but considering how big like his like kind of career went in the wake of Ghost of the Shell, I'm not surprised that he'd still be kind of just off doing his own projects.
Yeah.
But at least Easy Y, from what I've looked at as far as the staff members and who's working on it, Yutaka Izubuchi is the director, so it's like, okay, the mecha designer got the promotion. That's still fine. He's still closest to working on this franchise from its very inception. Like, I can't think of very many other people I would be willing to trust with the creation of a new Patlabor series.
And I'm just curious to see like what a new Patlabor in the modern era would even look like.
You can kind of get a tease of it if you look up stuff about Easy Y, because a few years ago there was like a kind of a new theater screening for like the first Patlabor movie, and as a preview thing that they aired like before going into the first movie was like a 2-minute like pilot sort of like montage thing of Easy Y, showing like, yes, this is what it looks like, this project is real, this is what the production is looking like. Obviously modern robot anime, so the robots are CG, but still very, very high quality CG. Everything about the mechanisms looks exactly like how you want. Character designs are different, possibly even different characters entirely, because one of the labor pilots, I look at him like, that is not our girl.
No. Oh, right. Yeah. I completely forgot about that trailer. It's been years since I saw that. It just slipped my memory, but yeah, you're right. Like, that is just a different character altogether.
But that's nice to look forward to, at least. But at least getting back to the OVA, since that's what we're talking about, from all the way at the beginning, as this was a mini-series, early days would release direct-to-video in Japan, obviously like on VHS and Laserdisc in the late 80s. Although I think the Laserdisc releases were a bit later than VHS, so probably extending to the early 90s if we're going by release. And with 7 episodes, like their first releases, like it all started from April 25th, 1988 to June 25th, 1989. And an interesting note, like that final episode date, that is not implying that there was like an even gap of time in between each of the episodes when they were being made. There was like a fucking 6-month gap between like the 6th and 7th, because the final episode was not directed by Mamoru Oshii. The implication is that it was initially meant to be like a 6-episode series.
Right.
And it's for very obvious reasons why, because episodes 5 and 6 are basically what we're going to be talking about when we get to our spoiler section. It makes sense. It's a 2-parter. I imagine they wanted to go with something more dramatic as the original ending, but considering the popularity, they decided to get like a guest director and put together one last episode half a year later, with the idea of being like, this will be a nice way to, refresh people and like keep Patlabor in their minds a bit more as they get excited for the movie, because the first movie, I believe, came out in 89. Yeah, so it was actually a surprisingly quick turnaround even then. That's the prehistory that could be covered regarding Patlabor. We know about the early days, what went into making it, what went on around it as far as other entries that were made. An important thing to note as well, I guess, regarding like all these Patlabor entries being made, is that the OVAs themselves, it's important to note, if you're someone that cares about the specifics of canonicity, the OVA episodes do not have any overlap whatsoever with the TV anime that got made after it.
Oh no, it is
like the only connective tissue to the OVAs are the movies themselves. Yeah, and then the manga, of course, is like its own completely separate thing, which I think, in terms of plot beats, has more in common with the TV series, but naturally still has its own differences.
Yeah, it all has like their own continuity.
So, with that out of the way, let's get into the meat of the early days and what it contains as far as our mecha and our characters. Surprisingly for mecha, probably going to be a bit short as far as describing it, because these are real ass robots.
Oh.
There's nothing too fancy. They are meant to be as mundane and practical as can be in a setting where robots have been introduced to perform mundane tasks in a modern society. But I think like the poster child robot for this franchise, though, we can easily point to it. It's the AV-98 Ingram.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking cool design, to say the least.
Yep, I just love the way it looks.
Very sleek, very Macross inspired, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Like VF1 or like, and I think with some of the other labors as well, when you look at them, there's a lot of that like sleek roundedness that you also saw in a lot of like Zentradi units from that original Macross anime.
And it's like got a cool like bunny ear kind of looking thing, which I just like the way the helmet looks, especially.
Yeah, because you got the visor, the sort of like the fins that you kind of describe looking like bunny ears. It has RoboCop gun holster style kind of compartment for like, because these are police robots.
Yeah.
So what are the type of weapons that like a robot used for police work should have? Let's just have robot-sized versions of the guns that like regular police officers would already be using.
Yeah,
such as a revolver,
and a baton and a shotgun sometimes, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, those are pretty much the police issue. At least with the revolver, like as I said so much, like RoboCop style, it's stored in the leg. You know, like specifically kind of like the lower leg in a compartment that opens up. And to kind of get around the fact that like they probably like wanted a more realistic way of handling like a robot getting a gun from that low down without having to bend over like a human.
Mm-hmm.
So like the Ingram's arm, its forearm can extend.
Yeah.
That's how it's able to grab its revolver out of its lower leg compartment and then immediately get into firing position. And as for the baton, it also has its own handy like storage space as well, because the Ingrams are all outfitted with like a shield, like a very small miniature riot shield on their left arm, and that's where the baton is stored. So they obviously get a very cool animation of pulling it out. Shotgun, naturally, it's a big enough weapon that it's like, there's no way to store that. Like, if an Ingram's coming in with a shotgun, they're expecting to do some damage. And there's also 3 Ingrams, by the way.
Yes.
As part of the SV2's loadout, is that they are essentially given 3 Ingrams. 2 of which are used, and then the third is basically left on hand as like something that they can use for spare parts if they need like a very quick repair or modification. And of these Ingrams, one is very important to remember. Like the Unit 1 Ingram, it goes by a different name. It's Alphonse. We'll talk about Alphonse's pilot because it becomes very clear that when we get to her why the Ingram gets a more cute pet name.
Yeah, that's you'll know in a bit. Don't worry. We'll explain it.
The other labors we kind of have to get into don't get nearly as much time to get into like the nitty-gritty details about how it works, just because they are so much more sparse in terms of like their appearances in the miniseries runtime. Yeah, so like to kind of break it down, there's the Asuka MPL 96 Taisyo, which I guess as further context for kind of how the Ingram is basically framed in the story of the OVA. The Ingrams are given to the SV2 specifically because like I guess they're the experimental unit in this case. And that means the Taisyos are the other police labors that the rest of the Metropolitan Police are using, and they are so outclassed very obviously by the Ingrams themselves. They're obviously mass-produced. They could get them to all the other departments of the police, but you can clearly tell that they are lagging behind as like labor technology is continuing to advance and like new models are getting developed, and the whole police department just does not have the budget to give everyone else the Ingrams.
Yeah, they're definitely like the budget robots for everybody else.
Even more budget is the MPL 97 AVT, which is like, it is so budget and limited that like it's not even good enough for like active deployment in a lot of cases. If anything, it's basically the labor that the police roll out whenever they are needing to like put someone through like training as far as like how to be like a Patlabor pilot. Like that's its use case. It, at least in terms of frame and like silhouette, like it's closest, I guess, to like the Ingrams in a lot of sense, but it's obviously just not as well armored. And like the head part itself, especially, like if it is on there, it's probably not going to stay on for very long. Most of the 97 AVTs, I think, generally do not have a helmet for obvious reasons, because they're training units and are meant to be like, you know, getting trainees like in and out very quickly.
Yeah, it's got a clear purpose and design, and that's not for like it's not something they'd use on the field.
But the police, they're not the only ones that get to use labors with guns. Naturally, like the labor technology would find its way into the military, so the JGSDF has their own labor unit, the AL-97 Atlas. Best way to describe this is, not bearing the police colors, wearing, it's got more dark military green, a lot more bulky as well, shoulder-mounted minigun, going again with like how I've noted that there's a bit of like a Macross influence to like some of its aesthetic, for like how the labors tend to look with like their kind of sleek, their balance of sleek and like rounded bulbous looks. The Atlas definitely looks a lot like some Zentradi units to me at a glance. It's got that very similar proportions with like in terms of, especially with like its upper body and just how kind of wide its shoulder line is going to its arms.
I can kind of see it. It does have like the look or feel of a Zentradi unit.
And last one that we'll mention, and even more brief compared to this, is the ALX-99 Helldiver prototype. An interesting to note is that, just to show how much thought the headgear put into the world building for Patlabor itself, even across all of its different continuities, is that you can trace a lot of the different labors to like different companies that are in charge of manufacturing them. Like the Ingram is manufactured by Shinohara Heavy Industries, and like they provide like a lot of like the major like labor designs that get implemented into the police and even military. And the Helldiver prototype is one of those latest ones that you'll actually get to see a bit more of when we get to our spoiler discussion. But in general, the short of it you could describe is that the Helldiver is Shinohara taking all of the data taken from the Ingram's use in the field and modifying it further to be like, you know, what if we gave the JGSDF their own version of the Ingram?
Yeah.
That's the easy way to look at it. It's got all of their similar like physical design traits otherwise. And that's like pretty much the major labors that I could think of to list, just so that it would not be so barren to be like, yeah, there's the Ingram. And now we're done talking about the Ingram, because that's the one you see the most. I mean, there are also construction labors and other civilian ones that you do see every now and then. But again, they're so numerous in design that it's like, it took some digging, funny enough, just having to go online and like be like, okay, I know there's like old websites from back in the day that like are just a big repository of fucking like technical details of all kinds of real robots from anime, so I had to go to like one of those just to dig up the specs and like specific details about like all these different labors that like show up for even just a split second sometimes.
Yeah, there is a lot of thought that was put into these mechas. Like, it's mostly in Japanese, but you can find like pages with footnotes and like details about how they would work, what kind of things they would do, how they'd function. And it's like, y'all didn't really need to go this deep, but I appreciate it either way.
Yeah, they cared a lot, so they put in the work. What you put in is what you get out of it. It's a very, very consistent formula that works every time.
Yeah.
Though arguably more numerous than the mecha themselves are the characters, because oh boy, just the SV2 alone has quite a wide cast of characters. Well, in this case, I guess it's more like the SV2 plus just the one captain of the SV1.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, if there's a 2, there's obviously a 1. And somehow, despite the 1 being the more responsible front-facing part of the special vehicles division, they're not the one getting all the cool toys.
No, we're giving it to the weirdos instead.
Although one of them I will never call a weirdo if I am being honest, because her intentions are pure and good,
Yes.
and that is Noa Izumi.
Mm-hmm.
This is the officer that we were alluding to, that is one of the Ingram pilots, and is specifically the pilot of the Ingram called Alphonse, because Noa is a labor enthusiast. Or I'd like to say, at least, she is a true robot enthusiast.
She's us, the audience. She loves her giant mecha robot.
She loves them. She loves to take care of them. Like, she loves to just, like, treat it and, like, keep it in the best condition possible, like someone that has, like, a price sports car, or, you know, considering the anthropomorphization that kind of goes into how people might treat robots, considering their humanoid look, it's almost treating it as, like, as family or as like a pet or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a detail that is elaborated on more specifically in the TV series, I recall. But there is like an additional reasoning for why she calls her Ingram Alphonse, and that is because it is technically Alphonse the Third, because she had a dog growing up named Alphonse, and it passed away, which was very sad. And then in her young adult life, I believe she had a cat that she also named Alphonse, making it Alphonse the Second.
And that's how we have Alphonse III, a giant robot, which is almost like a pet when you think. I don't want to think about it, actually.
I don't know. I mean, like, she understands, like us, that robots are more than just tools.
It's true.
They're partners. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she has her head on straight as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah.
Even if her labor obsession means that it's like, okay, this is your personality quirk. You're going here with the other weirdos. Mm-hmm. Not like it's gonna be a detriment to you. You get to do this shit.
She's definitely the more normal person of the cast, along with our second main character, I think.
Yeah, Asuma Shinohara. Yep, the family name Shinohara. He is he is the son of the president of Shinohara Heavy Industries, and that kind of leads into having this very, like, estranged son, almost college dropout kind of vibes or whatever. He is like the textbook example of the person that does not want to get into the family business and is being a rebellious piece of shit about it. Mm-hmm. And that leads into him having quite a bit of chemistry with Noa, because how the SV2's kind of dynamic is set up, or their group organization when out on the field, is that, you know, it's a team of 6 officers with them split into 2 teams, and each team, those 3 officers have different roles. One is the Patlabor pilot, which Noa is the pilot on her team, and Asuma is the operator on the same team as Noa. Like, they're basically the one that's essentially giving out orders and directions to the labor pilots. And like the third member, which we'll get to near the end, like the third member of each team are basically the transporters. They are the ones that drive the carriers that transport the Ingrams to and from, like, their jobs. But Asuma, with him being the one that gives orders, it definitely provides this sort of dynamic between him and Noa that is, if there was ever, like, a most likely rom-com pairing that Rumiko Takahashi never came up with, this would be the one.
Oh, it has that same vibe.
Oh, yeah, they are bitching at each other all the fucking time. And the wild thing about it is that they kind of have an unspoken agreement that, like, yeah, them bitching at and just roasting each other and just, like, otherwise having so much friction between them is the reason that they work so well together.
Yeah, they end up just being, like, really close friends who just happen to bitch a lot at each other.
Like, if you've ever had that group of friends that you hang out with, or even just one friend where it is like, you just are able to get away with saying a bunch of bullshit to their face, like just dunking on their ass, like, unprompted, but there's, like, no hard feelings coming out of it because, like, you and them are able to take it. That's basically that's how, like, the situation reads between the two of them, to the point where it is like, said as much in, like, other works, that it's more painful for Noa if Asuma just is not talking to or acknowledging her.
Yeah.
Like, that is somehow worse than him just, like, chewing her out for every little thing and just otherwise, like, yeah, just like getting into constant arguments about the tiniest things.
Yeah.
They're like ultimately these are the two that have the most closest between any other members on the SV2.
Yeah.
Everyone else
Yeah.
gets into much wilder territory.
Mhm.
Because we have to talk about Isao Ota.
We sure do. So tell us about Ota.
Yes, Ota can be best described as, I think, the one member of the SV2 that is doing all the legwork in making sure that the SV2 has the worst reputation among all of the police.
Pretty much.
Because he is dedicated to his job as a policeman in terms of being the righteous hammer of justice, and that includes being a gun nut and wanting to shoot his gun in a case if at any point if he can.
Bro is constantly thinking about shooting guns. He will take any opportunity to shoot as many guns as many times as he can get.
And is it any wonder that he is our second Patlabor pilot?
Yeah.
He is the pilot of Team 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because of his shenanigans, he is always the one that is, like, as a result, the biggest source of comic relief. Anything unfortunate that could happen to anyone usually happens to him first.
It'll happen to him. It'll always happen to him.
Oh, yeah, fucking Ota is a goddamn riot.
Mm-hmm.
The remaining characters, they've got their own other weird quirks as well, just to add even further to like this vibe of the SV2 just being this huge band of misfits. We have Mikiyasu Shinshi, who's his quirks aren't really in the form of like anything that gets in the way of like bad police work.
Yeah.
If anything, his wife is more unhinged.
Like his entire character could be described as wife guy. He is the wife guy.
Yeah, he is henpecked as can be, because he is the only person on the team that is married, and because of how the SV2's kind of its work ultimately is, where they always have to basically be on call and ready to respond, means that he is away from home a lot. And his wife does not like that. His wife still loves him all the same, but she flies off the handle at a moment's notice if anyone either like makes fun of her husband, or worst of all, if her husband does something that like could be seen as the slightest provocation. And yet this character is like clearly sympathetic. The only one that I think is ultimately more sympathetic than Shinshi is Hiromi Yamazaki, who is probably like just the most normal in the sense that he feels super fish out of water because he is a gentle giant of a man.
Yeah, he's the soft-spoken, kind-hearted one.
Shinshi and Yamazaki, by the way, they are the labor transport drivers, by the way. Yamazaki is on Team 1 with Noah and Azuma, and Shinji is on Team 2 with Ota, and our final member, Kanaka Clancy, who, despite looking the most Asian, is not actually Japanese, or at least not Japanese-born.
Somehow. She's American,
Yes.
right? She's American-born, at least.
Yeah, she's American. The only other living relative you know about from her is her grandma, who lives in Hawaii, and she was on the New York Police Department for years before getting transferred, basically like under the pretense of being like, yeah, it's a it's basically an exchange of knowledge and research, like we'll send her over to you guys so that she can learn about how you guys operate, and then maybe we can take that information and bring it back to the NYPD. Except maybe that's not actually the reason, at least according to a theory that Shinshi has.
She is also kind of an ice queen and like kind of the most competent member, and I'd let her shoot me. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I mean, like as far as this team is mostly guys, so having two types of girls on board with like Noah and Kanaka, they make for like a pretty good contrast. And like it's kind of no wonder as I look over at my Laserdisc collection and I have my LD set for the early days that it has like on both sides, like front cover and back cover, have like realistic drawn portraits of Noah and Kanaka.
Oh, of course.
Like, unsurprising. We love her.
Yes.
We love Kanaka. She's a fun character. You know who doesn't love her, actually?
Tell us who doesn't love her.
How about Mamoru Oshii, the director himself?
Oh, fuck.
I couldn't help but laugh when I found this detail because I just got flashbacks to how Shinji Mikami talks about how much he hated Rebecca in the original Resident Evil.
Oh shit! I actually had no idea
Yeah.
you disliked Konica that much, or Mamorushi at least did.
Yeah, well, I think the reasoning is a bit different.
Mhm.
Like, we know what Mikami's reasoning for not liking Rebecca Chambers
Yeah.
was. Like, she felt like it was like one of those characters with like her personality that felt like it was included out of like mandate from like executives,
Right, yeah.
even though it did not fit with the makeup of the Stars team.
Mm-hmm.
Kanika, in a way, Mamoru's like reasoning for not liking her was more due to the fact that like because of her background, it was a case of her being too perfect.
That's a weird way to put it.
Like, the idea being it's way too hard to like write stories around her where like it's difficult to glean any sort of flaws that make her feel like she's kind of at home with like the rest of the SV2 and their dysfunctions. Even though I think that's kind of a moot point, since like the whole point of her being like the most competent and like efficient cop is like kind of the point of her being there.
Yeah, I feel like you can definitely get a lot of good stories out of that. In fact, the series itself has a lot of good stories with her.
I think it's also informed a bit more when you look at the TV series and how there's like a stretch of that TV anime's runtime where Kanuka is not there. Like, she gets transferred back to the NYPD. So they're like, well, shit, we need a sixth member to fill the gap.
Right. I was going to mention that there was a point where she leaves and the show kind of dips in quality a little after she's left because you feel her absence really badly.
Like, the ironic thing with like that other sixth member, which I'm even forgetting her name now, that's kind of just how unremarkable it is that like Kanika might be too perfect, straight-laced of a cop and like way more competent than everyone else, but it's like that's what makes her work.
Yeah.
The replacement character in the TV series is like, it's actually, funny enough, harder to get any decent like story material out of her because there is just so much less about her out the gate. Like, you're replacing a quote unquote perfect character with a normal character, if that makes sense.
Yeah, a normal character that really doesn't have much of a personality.
Yeah, at least it's like kind of getting back to the team composition. It's funny how much like Ota is like the most irresponsible cop that like anyone else would be like, why the fuck would you ever let him be a Patlabor pilot?
Yeah.
And it turns out the reason for that is it's entirely because of Kanika being there and her being the operator for Team 2 that it is like she would never listen to any order that Ota would give because his orders, if he gave them, would be equally as bad. Like, just as irresponsible as anything else that he would do with him in the pilot seat. At least with someone that is very stiff as Kanika would make sure that it's like, he has no choice but to follow her orders. Especially because Ota kind of has respect for Kanika at the same time because of how much she is more like almost in an admission of his own flaws, even though he does not want to admit it. She's more of like the best example of like the kind of cop that he wants to be seen as.
Yeah, I think it's just because, like you keep mentioning, her being the most competent member really helps flesh out the cast and like gives Oda somebody to bounce off of, or just like Oda would be her foil and lead to some good comedic moments. Yeah, I don't know. That sounds like when you say like, oh, I don't know how to write her because she's too perfect. That sounds like a skill issue, bro.
And even then, after the episodes that we rewatched for our highlight discussion, I'm reminded, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like Kanika is just not above it all.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when you really get down to like her connections and her methods.
Oh yeah, she's kind of a thrill junkie. Also, as is tradition of most American characters, she will shout random English at any moment.
Oh yeah, her first introduction where she like basically greets herself in English, everyone just starts like fucking going ape shit because they're like, oh shit, an American.
Yeah.
It's like high school delinquent levels of getting real horny on the spot.
Pretty much.
I'm surprised none of them decided to shout, how about you show us your tits?
Oh god. I'm glad they did.
Though I imagine they probably would have gotten like pistol whipped right on the spot.
Oh, you know it.
Our last two characters to round this out, we have the SV2's captain, Kiichi Goto, the most pale, gout-looking motherfucker ever. Very straight-faced, but also kind of kooky in his own right. and unsurprisingly is the one that is best fit to be captain of these fucking misfits.
He is the most deadpan man you will ever see. He barely reacts to any of the crazy shenanigans around him, and I love this scruffy ass grown man.
His greatest skill, more than anything, is it's not ordering his officers to do what he wants, but it's fooling his officers into doing what they think they want, even though that's what he is ordering them to do. He resorts to a lot of trickery, and that even though he's a very good captain to his men, he is not professional in the slightest. Like, the only other captain that's more professional than him is the captain of the SV-1, Shinobu Nagumo. Female captain of the SV-1, you don't get to see any of her officers. I think the only officer of hers you get to see is in the TV anime for obvious reasons, because you have more time to get into that, clearly. But because both SV-1 and SV-2 share the same building, like, the captains get to see each other a lot. And this is the other romantic pair of the show, even though it's never going to go anywhere as much as Goto kind of wants.
Yeah, it's something they play around with a lot, but it's just, they don't really go anywhere with it.
Nah, not really. That's our characters. Quite the cast of weirdos, but lovable weirdos, even though they are cops.
Yes.
So why do we recommend
Why
it?
do we recommend?
Yeah, it's Patlabor's a fucking fantastic franchise, like, just on so many different levels, like, just the fun shenanigans, the technology, the world building, all this stuff. And it's so clear, based on, like, why we're talking specifically about the early days, is that honestly it's like the best and most concise entry point that you could want for getting a taste of what Patlabor is about. A 7-episode miniseries? Sure, why not? And a well animated one on top of that.
Yeah, it's simple. If you enjoyed the OVAs, you'll enjoy the TV series.
And it really does help a lot, just that, like, when you watch this and then go into the TV anime, it's like tonally everything is still pretty consistent. The TV series, maybe arguably more silly when you get to some episodes.
Oh, definitely.
But this is one of those franchises where, like, part of the fun of engaging with it is just knowing that there is this ever-present contrast. It is a world where its technology is so down to earth and everything feels lived in. You get, just a bunch of shenanigans, sometimes with episodes that feel like the SV2 is just suddenly plopped into, like, a Scooby-Doo hijink or of some kind. Yeah. That taking, like, this technology and how it is presented in the mundane way and injecting tons of humor along the way it's a light type of story that even when it finds ways to introduce different plots and, like, story arcs that have a lot more serious to them inherently, like the stakes are naturally higher, that they're still there to remind you that, oh yeah, even if they're going to be stopping what is essentially a terrorist action, the SV2 are still going to be the SV2.
Yeah.
You love these goofballs for what they are. You're gonna be there for the whole time, and you are likely going to be down for whatever stories that they come up with that theoretically have no end. It's a very serial work in that regard. It's why the OVA's format works well for me, whereas other OVAs that try to go the route of being more about, like, showing just vignettes or snippets of a larger world kind of fall flat sometimes, because they might just go for, like, just trying to emphasize the style and how cool it is. And it's like, yeah, it's cool, but, like, damn it still apparently was not cool enough to warrant getting, like, a full series out of it.
Yeah, Patlabor is one of those things that where it thrives on being a serial work, and I don't think it would be as strong if there was, like, a long ongoing narrative. Like, maybe it would work, but that's not the main appeal of the series. It's what kind of goofy situation are these guys going to find themselves into this episode?
Yeah, and the early days with its 7 episodes definitely gives you, like, a nice concise spread of just the type of stories that the SV2 will find themselves in. Like, there will be, like, anything ranging from, like we said, like, terrorist plots that need to be thwarted with, like, very high stakes to, again, Scooby-Doo mystery bullshit, because that is one of the episodes. there is also an episode that is just straight up an homage to Godzilla.
Yeah, there's an actual honest-to-God kaiju. Don't worry about it.
Oh, yeah. And if you think that's weird, oh boy, the TV anime has more of that.
They do have 47 episodes to work with.
Plus 16.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you like the early days when you watch it, recommendations for the TV series and New Files goes without standing. But again, because of that serial nature of Patlabor, this is one of those cases where it is like, if you do decide to watch like the TV continuity, please, for the love of God, do not try and binge it.
No.
Do not watch it with the intent of feeling like you have to finish it all, because you're just like ravenous for more content. At best, try to treat it the same way that, people would have treated the TV anime when it was airing in Japan back in the day. Like, just be like, all right, I'm in the mood for some Patlabor tonight. It's that time of the week. Do it like that.
This is a show you watch like one episode a day if you want with like your morning coffee or something. Don't watch it all in one go. That's not the best way to do this. Or even just once a week.
Yeah. And if you really do want like some kind of like serious plot thread that for some reason that's the only thing you want, then like you could just look up episode lists that like highlight like all the episodes that have to do with the Griffin and that entire conspiracy that's running underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's like the most involved plot that the TV anime has, and it's important to note that plot only gets resolved if you start watching the New Files, because the anime's time on TV ended before they could even finish that. Again, they had so many episodes, way more than they were allowed to air during like their time on network television.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of ridiculous, but again, that proves just how much of a serial work Patlabor is. You can make up any amount of stories involving these chuckle fucks.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously there's the other part of the series that is worth kind of bringing up if you want recommendations for more Patlabor material. If you like the OVAs and you specifically want, maybe some more Patlabor stuff that is in that specific continuity, well, that's where the movies come in. Patlabor the movie, it's still definitely worth a watch if you're wanting the more direct follow-up to events and characterization of the early days. It's very good, and with it being a movie, that means it has an extra big budget for some really good animation. And I think even then, that's where you also start to see a lot more of Mamoru Oshii's like particular like film director touches really starting to show up. Stuff where you look at it and you go, oh, I see how this guy would eventually work his way to directing a movie version of Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
That said, as a personal opinion, I would not necessarily recommend the second Patlabor movie. It's not a bad film.
No.
I guess as a preface, but with it being directed by Mamoru Oshii, you can see it as the next step of him getting closer and closer to making that Ghost in the Shell movie. But I really feel like it comes off less as a true Patlabor movie and more just a personal soapbox for Oshii to like just kind of go on about what he feels about the state of Japanese politics in the early 90s.
Yes, this is not a Patlabor movie. This is a Mamoru Oshii movie. This is, if you watch Ghost in the Shell and you want more of that, you'd watch this. This is not I want more Patlabor. I want more of this. You're not getting any of that. You're getting a completely different style of movie with this one.
You'll get a really engaging political thriller out of it if that is what you're looking for specifically. But like if you are more familiar with like Mamoru Oshii's like a filmography as informed by Ghost in the Shell, this is like the missing link kind of leading into that.
Yeah, but this is not like we keep mentioning, if you want more Patlabor, you're not getting it here. You're not getting any of that.
No, definitely not. And even more weird to me is just how much like the production of it from like Headgear itself, like they kind of approached the second Patlabor movie with the idea of being like their send-off to it, which I feel was kind of unnecessary. I felt like the first movie was already a good enough of a send-off to that particular continuity because it still had a lot of the Patlabor vibes, even with the stakes being as high as they could possibly be compared to any other stories in the universe.
Yeah.
It's a weird one. I know there are probably some fans out there of the movie that just want to like fucking crucify me for even saying this shit, but I don't care, especially because of our spoiler discussion, where I feel like it's a much more enjoyable version of what the second movie is trying to do, which I guess we'll get into. That discussion is probably going to be about as much about those episodes as much as it is a summary of what the hell happens in the second movie and why I have such gripes with it.
Yeah, also, if you watch that movie in modern day, some of the politics in it are a little weird.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes more sense if you look up what sort of political issues came up in the early 90s in Japan specifically, and you'll probably start to learn a bit more about maybe what Mamoru Oshii was thinking about when the decision was made for the United Nations to like request the help of the JSDF to help with like overseas military operations.
Yeah, but that's why we're not doing a spoiler cast about the movies. Why we're not talking about the movie. We're talking about the OVA here.
Yeah, which he was definitely more in check for the OVAs. I get why he did what he did for the movies. I mean, it makes as much sense. This was a dude that participated in the Ampo protests. It's very easy to tell like what this guy's political leanings are and how it's like, yeah, I can sympathize with that.
Yeah.
But where to watch the early days? That's a bit tricky.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's no legal digital outlet for this. Like, despite the kind of the cult classic status and the fact that I've definitely seen it come up in a lot of, like, weeaboomer circles, I guess we'll call them, that have a lot of fondness for Patlabor, and rightfully so. And yet, despite that, there's just no easy way to, like, watch the OVAs, like, through like, streaming services. There are Blu-rays that were like printed at least like a decade ago, and therefore are expensive to get like on the on the secondhand market. You can find YouTube uploads if you really want to search for it, but obviously that basically means it's that or Sailing the High Seas if you just want like the most cost-effective option to go with. Or if you want to be like me and just have a huge fucking flex on everyone, get a Laserdisc player, a CRT, and the LDs of the early days from Japan. You won't have subtitles, but you'll feel like you're back in the 90s.
And you can brag about it like Ark is right now.
Hey, look at me. Man's got to have a hobby.
Yeah, I know.
Or two, or three.
Or 5, I understand. Don't worry.
So with that breakdown, our recommendation for it, where to watch it, time to get into the spoilers.
All right.
And we've alluded this much, like our big spoiler that we're going to be getting into on the other side is the big two-parter that was originally meant to conclude the OVA series, and also was conceptually revisited by Mamoru Oshii when he did the second movie. So stick around as we get ready to talk about the SV2's Longest Day.
And we'll see you all there. Or we'll see you later if you decide to bounce out. But either way, see y'all soon.
All right.
Okay.
How many terrorist actions and coup d'etats do you think you could ultimately count in the SV2's career?
God, more than 3, I think. It's kind of incredible how many times they've had to deal with this shit in the series as a whole.
Yeah, the SV2's Longest Day is all about that. We've got like just a full-on rebellion that has the capital to Japan and a fucking death grip. Before that coup can even start, we obviously have to get into the first part of this two-parter, which is it's a classic setup, I would say, as far as like how to structure a story for a two-parter. Your first episode, it's all about the setup. It's laying down the pieces for what's about to go down. And then your second episode is all about the payoff.
Yeah. This was also one of the harder shows to take notes on because it is kind of dense.
Yes, definitely. But I still felt it was like worth going through like on the whole because I think at the end of the day, these two episodes, this story arc, it is, at least still to me, the biggest highlight of all in the early days.
Oh, yeah.
At least the best part, whenever you watch an episode of this OVA, is that you always get your very handy, introduction to, like, the backstory of Patlabor itself, the thing that I conveniently just read off almost verbatim in our synopsis. And even for this highlight discussion specifically, is that because of how separate all these stories are, I don't need to give any fucking context for what happened during episodes 1 through 4.
Yeah, don't you just love episodic works? They could just jump in at any point and not feel like you're missing anything.
Yeah, obviously the long-running narrative works are their own work of art and they're worth celebrating, but both can exist.
Yes.
It's good to have different types of storytelling every now and
yeah.
then. So our episode starts with the SV2 on vacation. It's basically like the New Year's week. Pretty much, it's the only time during the entire year where the members of like the special vehicles group, like, they get to go home and they basically relax, have a vacation, spend time with family, do whatever they want before they eventually have to get sent back to the office, which has its own dorms and everything, because they got to be ready to respond to any labor crimes. They're the only one that can handle it, regrettably. But Goto's still there, Shinobu as well. He really does not need to make such a flimsy excuse to justify like why he is there, as well as showing his romantic chemistry with Shinobu.
Yeah.
But he tries. It's a pretty poor excuse, but whatever. The two captains get some quality time alone while everyone else is enjoying their vacation, except for Asuma, because of course he's the only person with the worst family life that he does not want to go back to.
So instead, he just kind of just charges right in to the chagrin of like most mechanics.
Yeah, even though he has decided to not inherit the family business of any sort, that he's still just going to barge into like his family's factory, because that's at least the part of his of like his upbringing that he's willing to abuse no matter what. Mm-hmm. All the poor workers constantly trying to grab him and like hold him down, but he is just too strong in his power walk that he could just go into the hangar, meet with like the head mechanic, meet with old Jeets, ask him about what's up, sees the new Patlabor that's in development with being made with a custom computer and a whopping 64 gigabyte CD-ROM.
Whoa.
Ah, you gotta love media that dates itself on what it thinks is cutting edge technology.
Fucking love it. I love old media shit like that.
I'll never forget the story my dad told me about like when his workplace got I think like the first CD-ROM drive, like back when it was I think like 1x or even 2x speed.
Oh god.
And everyone just marveling at like, oh man, this thing can read optical media and it's like a consumer device. This is awesome. It's slow as balls.
This is gonna change the future. This is the future.
And it did for at least a few years before we all went digital anyway. Yeah. Well, not few years, few decades at least.
It took some time.
So you at least get to see that like all this fancy custom hardware for this Patlabor, which is being, derived from the data made for the Ingram. Yeah, this is what we were talking about in our primary mecha. This is the ALX99 Helldiver. They're making it for the military, unsurprisingly, because you get to see, hear plenty of like name drops or whatever of stuff like the Babylon Project, which is like a major construction project that is like the center of like all the background lore in any version of Patlabor, whichever way you look at it, because the whole idea of the Babylon Project, for those uninitiated listening to us talk about the spoilers for these episodes without actually watching Patlabor, Babylon Project is essentially the Tokyo government deciding to build a giant artificial landmass in the Tokyo Bay just to kind of expand, like Tokyo's landmass, essentially have more space for its people, because fuck it, that bay is not being used for anything, I guess.
I think it's something that is basically the focus of the first movie too.
Yeah, because there's a lot of environmentalism, like kind of protest groups that do not like the idea of taking such like a natural spot as that bay and just like dumping an artificial island on top of it. So like basically like all of the issues that people have with that project comes to a head in the first movie. So at least until then, you're seeing that Shinohara is like trying to get military contracts with this new Patlabor design, because that's the only way that they're going to be able to stay relevant. Like they do also touch on a lot about how fickle things can be when you have such rapidly progressing technology, where it's like what was once a new like revolution in technology can suddenly become antiquated in like 3 years time. And that is like horrifying to think about from a business standpoint. So, like, the whole reason that Ozma is here and looking at this stuff is because, he does not want to go see his dad. He already did before he went to the factory, and it went about as well as you would think it is. So, he is trying to find any other place that he can crash at, like the other members of the SV2.
Yeah.
He first tries at Shinshi's apartment. That fails, least of all because the wife does not like the idea, crying in Shinshi's chest while holding her butcher knife very dangerously close to his face. Girl needs some help.
Yeah, he left because of the threat of being stabbed, which understandable.
I think worse yet is that Asuma probably isn't the one that would have gotten chopped up by the knife. Shinji was clearly going to get it.
Yeah.
But then the next one he tries is Kaneka, which, by the way, good word of advice for anyone if they just so happen to be seeing someone that they know works as a cop. Never pull a hold-up joke on them.
Oh.
Especially if it's Kaneka.
Of all the people to pull it out, you decide to do it on Kaneka. The second worst person would be Oda. Because Oda would actually just shoot you.
Oh, yeah. Kaneka at least has the fucking proper trigger discipline. Oda would just fucking, he would start pulling the trigger even before it came out of his holster. He would shoot his leg on accident and then the person in front of it.
Oh, God, yeah, that's the most Oda thing that would happen.
Oh yeah, he doesn't even consider trying to hang out at Ota because duh, no shit. Hiromi's out of the question. He is at the southernmost tip of of Japan's borders. So all that really leaves left is Noah. The one person on the SV2 that Asuma absolutely has the most chemistry with. And he sure got the worst luck, calling her on the payphone as military traffic passes through overhead and realizing he has to travel all the way to Hokkaido just to see her. Yeah, you at least get to see what the home life at Hokkaido's home is. Her family runs a liquor store. Naturally, the dad is just drinking, complaining about how much he just wants her daughter to get married already.
And it's I'm sorry, bro. The only thing she's married to is her job and also her giant robot, probably.
The giant robot, arguably more so.
Yes.
She would probably try to argue, if at any point, she had to stop working as an officer, she would see it as a divorce and be like, okay, but Alphonse is coming with me.
Alphonse still belongs to me. That's my...
I have the custody papers for Alphonse. You can't do this to me.
Oh, she would absolutely do that. She's attached that robot to the hip.
Oh, God. You think if she ever did actually have a child at some point, after losing the dog, then the cat, then the Ingram, that she would just have her firstborn child be Alphonse the Fourth?
I think so. I think she just call them Alphonse again, regardless of gender. No, your name's Alphonse now. That's it.
Yeah, she just likes the name. I can respect it.
I know what it's like, just giving the same name to everything constantly.
Yeah, and finally, halfway through, we get some fucking action in this episode. Kind of referring to, again, the military traffic that was passing through. Yeah, there's a big cargo carrier on the highway that suddenly speeds off past the police blockade as it contains a labor that gets up and starts shooting the cops chasing it. And that labor apparently was one meant for the JGSDF. It is a pretty well-animated chase scene, all things considered. You could tell that this is obviously OVA animation and not TV animation, even though there was a lot of good animation that even came out on TV in the 80s. But when it came to gunfire and destruction, they definitely reserved a big chunk of the budget just for animating that in loving detail for the early days.
Oh yeah, and you can definitely tell they have OVA money because there's a lot of small little details they put into all the destruction. I'll mention later when we get to a particular scene.
Oh yeah, that one is a good moment. And even smaller details, if they want to show a slow head turn of a character, they're gonna make sure that they jam as many in-between frames as possible.
Yeah.
So as news of this highway chase starts getting broadcast over TVs, Azuma stops by a ramen stall at the train station near where Noah is living in Hokkaido. This is quite the chance meeting that doesn't really strike you, the viewer, until you kind of get the sense from the framing of it all that this random motherfucker who walks in, asks for a bowl of ramen, tells him to hold the onions, and then proceeds to dump a shit ton of cayenne pepper into it and slurps it all up, that you're like, oh, this dude is evil.
And just in case you didn't get that, the camera decides to pan over to him, linger for a few seconds, and we get the Yakuza boom boom sound effect.
Yeah, even the head turn as well,
Mhm.
as I was mentioning, which as a very, very gout looking person, as all dressed in black, suspicious as all hell, but whatever. Asuma's not going to inquire about this any further because Noah shows up to pick him up. They go to her place. And I do like as well, like the just the whole scene at her house once Asuma shows up, because it starts to be a bit more lively. Her dad, Noah's dad, is like actually kind of okay with this, because like, oh, someone from work that like she's on really good terms with. Maybe there is a chance that they could like, you know, get married, and I can finally have my wish of my daughter, you know, getting married and having kids. But I think it's clear that Noah's dad was not prepared for what the usual dynamic is between these two.
Yeah, you can kind of see him like either not approving or getting jealous or just not vibing with the current situation.
I think according to Noah, it's a case of jealousy in the sense that, you know, even though from the outset it looks like a bunch of bickering and arguing, it's like, I think even he's able to tell that this is a level of arguing that does not imply they hate each other, but it's like, it's clearly a sign that they work so well. And I think it might imply something about how he wishes that like even his current married life was anywhere as good as that.
Yeah, like to be as close as these two are.
Yeah, being able to be this close while just bickering and being like, what gives? What makes you think you could give me orders now? As they're just getting fucking drunk on like full bottles of sake.
I really love their dynamic. The way they bicker with each other feels very just kind of realistic in that way of just, you know what I mean?
But at least leaving Hokkaido for a moment, Goto has started putting some plans into motion because he's noticed something suspicious for the past few days that he's been hanging out at headquarters. There have been some government-looking types staking out the place. And when they finally notice that Goto's been spying at them back, they drive off in a panic. He realizes something is up, you know, and decides to take action, such as sneaking out one of the Ingrams to have it shipped to Shinohara Heavy Industries for repairs, something that has the lead mechanic at the SV2 kind of upset at the idea of like, why would you ever do that? Our mechanics are top tier. We could do this shit faster than them. But it's like, nah, Goto has a plan. He knows that he needs to do this. He needs at least just one Ingram. He gets Ota involved because I imagine Ota was just otherwise bored out of his fucking mind that he was not being able to partake in any police work. Yeah. So it's like, all right, fine, I'll do this. So who's the enemy? It's like, they haven't shown themselves yet, but they will soon.
Eventually.
And then after all this setup and intrigue, Goto touches base with Nagumo, talking in his car, because this is the level of suspicion he is at, where he is like no longer trusting relaying important information over the phone. That he goes, yeah, so got some more details about that labor that was in that highway chase and started firing on the police. Yeah, that was the AL-97. That was meant for the JGSDF. And something big is probably going to be going down right now. And with the discussion between the two of them, it's like, yeah, no wonder Mamoru Oshii felt the need to do this kind of like government conspiracy plot again for the second movie and make it somehow more sterile.
I'll also have Goto be like the fucking main character of that movie too, and just spout all the his political beliefs.
Goto and Nagumo both, which I guess that's probably the reason for redoing it in the movie, because Nagumo is just kind of the unwitting accomplice getting roped into this. Yeah, like Goto is very much, as you will find, like the main character of this two-parter. But you at least get like after the discussion concludes, you do get to see them part ways. The rain turns to snow. The snow being very fortuitous, because that means like people in Tokyo do not want to be out driving when it is snowing or when snow has fallen. So in the very early AM the next day, Just after 4 a.m., the train stations open up again. Oh,
Uh-huh.
that employee is having a bad start to his day when fucking tanks start moving through the tunnels and on the streets and helicopters in the air and more of those AL-97s. That's right, we got a fucking coup d'etat on our hands. And they even hit the SV2, which was more or less what Goto predicted.
Like we said, this is not the last coup d'etat they're going to deal with in this series.
Any sort of terrorist plots, it is a concerning amount. Even though you could probably say it's single digits, it's still a concerning amount all the same that the SV2 has to deal with this. Because, oh boy, these rebels, they are swift and prepared. Because, of course, it is just a contingent of the JGSDF. With that amount of military training, they're like, yeah, we can absolutely coordinate this kind of revolt, take over major buildings and points of interest in Tokyo to just have the entire capital on lockdown. The only place they have not taken control of is the Metropolitan Police headquarters, because Nagumo, with her discussion with Goto, was basically told, just make sure that everyone is mobilized and ready to respond because something's probably going to happen this very morning. And sure enough, they were ready.
Yeah.
So the stage is set for what is going to go down in our next episode. The members of the SV2 are cutting their vacation early as they all got to head back to Tokyo. We know who the mastermind is. It's officially announced. And even the mastermind knows full well that, Goto is involved because he gets news about the police headquarters not falling immediately because it seems like they were prepared for him. So it's like, oh, my old college buddy's involved in this, I see.
Yeah.
It's such a good end to this episode. Like I said, everything is all about the setup, and it's a good thing the next one's about the payoff.
Yeah.
Mostly. So we go into part 2 of the SV2's longest day. We don't get the usual background introduction to what the Patlabor universe is about, like all the other episodes. Instead, we just get a more standard recap of this is what happened. At least the OP still plays, even though I think its upbeatness kind of flies in the face of what is going to be happening for the rest of this two-parter, because the stakes are quite heavy. Understandably, the SV2 headquarters are completely occupied to the point that Kaneka has to go undercover, disguised as a delivery person for the Chinese restaurant that the SV2 always orders from.
Yeah.
Just so they can get info about, okay, what happened to the laborers? Can we use them? Okay, so the first Ingram, Unit 1, that got shipped off to Shinohara Industries. There's also a working test labor at the Nakano Police Academy that is still operational because the head mechanic last worked on it and he knows it still works. So that's what they got to do, as well as getting some other very, very concerning info about what these rebels have cooked up. But Shinobu Nagumo is definitely getting it the hardest at this moment. We got a remote meeting with the upper brass, with or at least the members of the upper brass that were not present the day that all the buildings were being and government places of government institution were being seized. So now they're just there to give a bunch of unfavorable orders to Shinobu to just basically just be full-on cowards, and even start issuing an arrest on Goto because they're hey, did you know that that the leader of this coup was friends with Goto back in college? And how did you even know that he was going to try and lay siege to this to the Metropolitan Police Department? What's your connection to all this? She's not taking any of this and is clearly going rogue. And at least she elbows the guy that tries to apprehend her real good as she fucking storms out of there.
Yeah, I do wonder how much of the scene is Mamoru Oshii bleeding his own politics inside here, because they are basically a bunch of cowardly bureaucrats going, no, let's not do anything at all, let's not anger the terrorists, while the one person is going, no, we have to take action even if it means our own deaths, we have to do something. because that's better than nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it's also there to kind of highlight that just because of the nature of the special vehicles divisions themselves, especially SV2, is that this is the only way you can get away, I feel, with like making any sort of like cop-centric media and like not feel disgusted by it, because like the main characters that you are focused on are the people that even the cops as an institution do not like. Like, it's a case of the enemy is my friend. It's like, okay, I could tolerate these renegade hoodlum cops if they are at least down with the fact that they understand that all the other cops are bastards, including themselves.
This is one of those like instances, I feel like rare instances, where the renegade cop thing works and doesn't feel gross.
And it's funny too that even after all this, like I think this is actually the last you hear of Nagumo during the entire episode is a fucking phone call with Goto just being like, seriously, what the fuck did you drag me into? Because now Goto is just living the homeless life. He's just driving with like cheap disguises to kind of throw off the authorities and whatnot as he is like trying to piece together what his plan is with this entire coup, where to find him so that he can apprehend him. But until then, when you need someone to steal a labor for a big job, I guess Ota wouldn't be my first pick, but he at least got the results, minus the head.
I mean, he got it. He did it. He got the thing.
Yeah, but you saw the head come clear off as he just like crashed through that fucking wall. Even worse yet is the fact that like I think it only got the way that it did is because there was probably the intent to be more subtle about it, but then like I guess one of like the captains at the academy just said some shit that was like the trigger point for Ota to fly off the handle in that very moment. It's just like, god damn it, you cannot be trusted with anything, you fucking oaf. But like we said, the SV2 may be the good guys in this case, but we still have to emphasize, even with the rest of the police and rebel forces trying to apprehend them, these guys are still cops. Kaneka just straight up takes a detour to the the U.S. like air defense force or whatever it is, like the American branch that's kind of like set up in Japan, because Kaneka naturally has connections there with the American employees there, herself being an American and all, and is like, for this info you gave me, I think I'm entitled to a little hush money. Said hush money being a big fucking minigun sized up for a Patlabor. Ota is goddamn happy about this.
Oh, he is so ecstatic. That man is having an actual nosebleed. He is getting so aroused right now.
And this is the moment I was also hinting at, that like this is where Shinji basically puts forward his theory about like maybe Kaneka wasn't like the perfect true and proper cop that we thought she was. Maybe the whole pretext of her coming here was more exile than like cultural exchange.
Yeah, it's like, oh, maybe she's not as steadfast in her sense of justice as we thought or something.
Yeah. She'll take bribes and she'll do what is necessary to get the job done the way she thinks is best, especially if it gets her adrenaline going. No wonder she's Ota's partner.
Yeah. Maybe they actually belong with each other. Who knows?
After that happens, more time is spent with Goto. He gets a call from Azuma, and that's basically where he gets the confirmation about the general area of where Kai's whereabouts are. Because yes, the mastermind of the coup, that was the guy that went into that ramen stall and just ordered noodles and and just dumped a bunch of cayenne pepper into it to warm himself up. So like he's somewhere. He's obviously not in Tokyo. Goto's trying to figure out like how he possibly could have gotten far north away from where all of this shit is happening. Gets the idea as he crashes through a fucking like advertisement billboard for like a ferry service from like Sendai to Tomokomai, I think it's called. That he rings up Inspector Matsui, one of his old buddies, who factors in a lot of, unsurprisingly, the second Patlabor movie as well, in an almost similar manner. This is also where I think you brought it up as well, that like this is where he brings up the the events of the kaiju episode, where it's like this is basically him cashing in on a favor that he built up, helping Matsui with that entire case.
Which is so funny because they're just like acknowledging, yeah, that happened. Anyways, about this coup now.
Yeah, pretty much that is pretty much the most you're gonna get out of any sort of like continuity and not acknowledgement across any of these episodes. Really, Goto meets with maritime safety and like is shown satellite photos of 2 ferries hovering suspiciously off the coast of Japan, both of which having missile launchers, which ties up with the fact that the SV2 was able to get information about the fact that the coup d'etat forces have a goddamn nuke that they stole from the Americans that was brought into the country as part of a joint Japan-US military training exercise. Like, that is the whole reason why this entire thing was able to get off the ground the way that it was, is using that as a cover and getting all the necessary resources to just take over the capital. Like, all these events taking place, it reinforces why I like this government conspiracy plot more than the scenario of the second Patlabor movie. It's similar circumstances. Like, yes, Goto and his team are basically rogue. They're in a very delicate situation, but the key difference here between that movie and this 2-parter is that because this is still the early days, the ways they go about achieving their goals still have that like very subtle comedic value to them. Like, it's stuff that reminds you these are still a bunch of fucking misfits.
Yeah, I think that's why Patlabor as a series can bounce between like so many genres and different tones. It's because it's always consistent with one thing in that it's like it always has a sense of fun in whatever it does. And it always remembers, no, these guys, they're like a big dysfunctional family. And that's like the heart of Patlabor right there.
Definitely. And even so, like, with the amount of focus that's being put on Goto's exploits, it's still more fun to see it here, even compared to the movie, just because of when Goto gets close enough, like far enough along like the trail of clues that you realize, oh, this is very clearly one of those conspiracy plots where the antagonist is effectively setting everything up for the principal protagonist to follow the pieces. Because, again, at the end of last episode, he knows Goto is involved and is more or less just allowing himself to be found out by Goto himself because he is that confident he has the advantage no matter what. That it's like, yeah, I will just confirm for you is that, yeah, I do have a nuke and I do intend to fire it. What the fuck you gonna do about it?
How are you gonna stop me, bro?
How you gonna stop me? Like, my evil looking version of you. He really does. He does just straight up look like an evil version of Goto.
He is the evil Goto. Absolutely.
Now, a change of pace, we go to Shinohara Heavy Industries because Noah and Azuma were given orders to head over there and await further orders because Goto's obviously got a plan cooking as far as how to deal with this, and it's going to involve labors. But remember, any scene with Noah and Alphonse is cute because Noah understands how robots like labors are not simply tools. Yeah. Not to her, at least. She is polishing Alphonse's head while rubbing her cheek against it all lovingly. Normal behavior. She
just understands how important having a giant robot friend is.
Yeah, but Alphonse is not going to be the only labor that is being set aside for an upcoming operation, because we're now going back full circle to that experimental labor, the ALX-99, that was being teased all the way at the start of the previous episode, because the only way to like truly deal with this is to have like basically a pincer attack between 2 different labors. Though it might be difficult, it might be hard to see how that could possibly be done, considering our target is on a hijacked ferry. 1 out of 2 ferries that have been hijacked, and no one knows yet which of the 2 boats that our mastermind is on. But we'll find out eventually. Until then, Ota's having the fucking time of his life, firing that minigun at high speed down the freeway. The force of that gun just shooting bullets everywhere as he exits that tunnel, and the force and recoil is so strong. You are seeing the paneling on that fucking 97 AVT just like flying off. This is absolutely what you were talking about as far as like one of those money shots where they set aside the budget for something that they knew they could get away with, like some lavishly put together animation.
This is like one of those details that they didn't have to put in, but they did just as a flex, just to sell how powerful this minigun is and how incomplete the labor is as well. Like, oh yeah, it can barely handle shooting this thing. Its armor's falling off.
Oh yeah. And Kaneka's even just riding on a motorcycle at high speed, again, proving that like she is also a thrill seeker in her own right. Get some sick air on the motorbike as like the damage from the minigun literally causes part of the highway to collapse underneath them. Too bad that's where the chase ends. She gets caught, and Ota and Shinji crash at the bottom.
Thanks, Oda.
All she has to say about it is just idiots. But whatever. That's really all they needed to do. They just needed to buy time, literally getting the heat off of Goto so that he could like put his plan into motion. And the plan is the one that involves the other half of the SV1, because Hiromi finally makes it all the way up from Okinawa, and he's going to be the pilot of the Helldiver prototype. Because Goto's plan, after he figures out from another phone call with Kai and knowing exactly how he thinks, that he's like, all right, I know which ferry he's on. We're gonna launch the operation. Alphonse is gonna be airlifted by helicopter and dropped onto the Safflower, which is the name of the ferry. That's gonna be a distraction because we're borrowing a nuclear sub from the Americans that is going to launch the Helldiver prototype out of its missile tube because Hiromi's a big and strong enough dude that he could withstand the G's of it. Like, honestly, it's a fucking awesome plan if I do say so myself.
Yeah, it does. It rolls.
More mecha operations in like real robot anime need to involve the kind of ballsy tactics this does, where you're launching giant robots as missiles. And it's also at this moment that like you still see the tension, even with this plan already set in stone. Tension's still rising because everyone else, like Matsui especially, still has his doubts of like, are you really sure that you have Kai figured out in this case? Are you sure you're not actually on his side if you're that confident?
Right.
Because the important thing to note about Kai, with this plan, like terrorists would in this case, they put out a list of demands. But they're the kind of absurd demands that Kai knows very well that the Japanese government is never going to like agree to, or any government in the world. Any demand to be like, I want you to absolve every aspect of your modern government this very fucking instant.
Yeah, which is such an absurd demand.
Because, surprise, he just wants to fire the nuke.
Yeah, he was ready to.
He was ready for it? None of his comrades were, however.
No.
They were definitely thinking that it's like, oh, it's just going to be a bargaining chip. Yeah, this is clearly just going to like cause like the government to like fall into surrender, right?
No.
Oh,
about that.
Yeah, because again, Goto's intuition is spot on. He is on the Safflower. That's where the missile is. The Helldiver lands after being jettisoned out of the water, crushes the launcher so that the missile cannot be fired, and then, just to, finish it off, Alphonse gets airdropped, crashes through the fucking bridge in, again, very loving detail. Anytime there's any kind of destruction, the Studio Dean made sure they had enough money to do it justice. And you just get the shot of Alphonse with its robot-sized Magnum just aiming straight at Kai as he's back against the wall, telling him he's under arrest.
It's such a cool shot.
And then the story ends.
Oh yeah, then it's just such an abrupt ending to the entire thing. It's like, whoop, well, that's it.
Yeah, like I completely forgot
Same.
that was how it ended. For some reason, I had assumed that there was at least going to be, well, there is a final speech from Kai, but it's not the kind of substantial one I was thinking it was. Like, at least one that would have given a bit more explanation as to why he would be willing to go so nuclear. I guess if I have to, this is the one thing where I will give props to how the second Patlabor movie handles its government conspiracy plot, because I think almost as a correction to this one flaw, it actually goes out of its way to explain why like the terrorist actions in that movie are being done.
Yeah.
The reason for it in that movie is the mastermind is not wanting to actually like destroy the country or take it over. It's literally just a bunch of random scare tactics because of what he believes is a necessary act to give Japan a wake-up call about their so-called peace and whether or not they're actually ready to deal with like a real terrorist or military attack.
Yeah.
That's the one part of it I respect. Because that does not exist with Kai's motivation, and we probably will never know what the true motivation is at the end.
No.
At best, it just feels more like an absurd like game he wanted to play, maybe because he knew Goto being on the police department would get involved and would just be his opportunity to show his superiority, considering, you know, the two of them used to be friends. Yeah. And at some point they had a falling out, presumably because Goto decided, yeah, I'm just going to become a cop. Like, fuck this military shit.
And if you think, is Kai ever going to show up again anytime, any point in the series? No. This is all you're getting from him. You're never going to get... He doesn't even get, like, a passing mention at all after this.
Not even in the 7th episode that came out 6 months after this. It's like the events of this basically become like a fading memory, which I think... Again, getting back to how serial in nature Patlabor is supposed to be, in any other work, it'd be so easy to look at this and be like, oh, this is the riveting conclusion to like a story arc that slowly began to build up over time and yada, yada, yada. But it's like, no. Kai, his final words before it like freeze frames on him and the credits play, kind of implies as much that it's like, I spent 20 years preparing for this plan. I thought it would work. It didn't, but at least I'm alive.
The end.
And that means like the day is just going to go on. Like, I think like the whole idea of it basically being that there is never truly the end in this world, much like real life.
Yes.
Much like our reality, life keeps going on. The SV2 is still going to keep doing stuff. There's probably going to be another coup d'etat or other terrorist action that they're going to have to deal with. This is just, you know, as much as the stakes were higher than anything else they did in their early days, and is obviously the stakes are going to be, of course, even higher when we get to the movies.
Of course, yeah.
This is just normal. I think that's ultimately, you know, even after I was blindsided being reminded about how abrupt this ending was, I quickly came to acceptance of it again, like I did before, because of that very same reasoning. You know, the mundanity of the Patlabor world is still going to be absolute.
Yeah, it's like you said, life still goes on. It doesn't stop for anything. People forget and they keep living their lives.
People are going to move on, and the Babylon Project is still going to keep going until it finally reaches its, like, destructive end in the Patlabor movie. Which, again, I always still like to think of that as the true... That is still the true stopping point for me in terms of the early days continuity. Yeah. Because of just how much that entire construction project always keeps getting built up, you know, that it made sense to kind of see it get its payoff the way that it did, especially with like a movie budget and just all the action and destruction, while still showing that the SV2 are still gonna you know, they're still gonna be like the weirdos that they always are, until enough years pass that they move on to different positions in life and then, you know, just grow up and move on.
Yeah.
Which I guess, I mean, I know that's like the intent that Headgear were trying to go with ultimately with their early days continuity going into the movies. But Patlabor continuing to exist, I think, has obviously proven otherwise. We don't need Patlabor to end.
No.
Like, it's not one of those stories where it is like, okay, there's a clear beginning and a clear end. You don't need to fuck around with anything more. Anything else is just going to dilute it. No. Like we said, it's a serial work.
It can exist.
You can just make up new scenarios that are going to be entertaining and silly and sometimes serious because it involves the characters and group that we know and love.
It's a show that can exist at any time and like any decade and still be good because it's like there's nothing really tying everything together. Yeah, that's like the best part about it. That's like one of the strengths, like I keep mentioning.
And probably about as good a way to like wrap up our discussion as well, tying it back to that aspect of Patlabor as a whole. It was fun going back through these episodes, even if it did require like me to watch these episodes twice, just because one session was entirely dedicated to all the note taking. Like with how dense it is, like if I were to be more diligent with the notes, it literally would have been just like a full on like plot synopsis with none of the color commentary about weird bits that stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
This is good, and that's still not to discount any of the earlier episodes in the OVA that have nothing to do with like this terrorist plot, because again, there's the fucking kaiju episode. There's an entire episode that feels like a Scooby-Doo mystery. There's Konica Clancy's like intro to the team, which is also pretty good in its own right. This is about as perfect of a mini series that you would want if the goal that you're looking for is just a series of vignettes of a much larger universe that makes you go, yeah, I want to see more of this.
Yeah, we could have talked about
it does its job.
We could have talked about any of these episodes and had a good time with them.
This was fun.
This was a lot of fun.
I cannot wait for Easy Y when it comes out next year.
Same. I'm expecting a good time from that too. It's going to be nice going back into the Patlabor world.
Especially with like a lot of the key members from Headgear still around and working on it. It's like franchise is in good hands. This is not going to be one of those like situations like the third Patlabor movie or and I didn't even talk about the fact that there was like a live action TV series of all things. I haven't even seen like a screen cap of it to know what it was like or how good it was. I don't know, maybe not so good. I'm not sure. I never see it brought up. I just know it exists. They could go either way, but I think whatever. We're here for anime.
Yes, we're not talking about the live action show anyways. And the moral of the story is go watch Patlabor. It's good. In fact, go watch all the shows we talk about.
Even if we're not going to have any more time to talk about, stuff from like the TV series and some of the other wild, goofy ass episodes it has, you could still look it up on your own time. You're still going to have to sail the high seas like you'll have to with the early days. But it's worth it. Just load up episodes when you feel like and watch it, and it'll be a nice way to pass a half hour of your time. Thanks for being on again, Neff, as always. Of course.
And thank you for having me.
Thanks to all the listeners at home for sticking around on this discussion. Hopefully you watch Patlabor, or if you listen to this and you already love Patlabor, awesome. Watch it again. Or maybe read the manga if you haven't. I don't know. I actually need to read the manga. It was like a thought that came to my mind where it's like, that's actually the other major piece of Patlabor media I've still not gotten around to that seems like it's of interest to me.
Yeah, I have not read it either. Somehow that completely passed my head.
It's hard in a lot of cases to think about like manga specific like mecha franchises, like so often like it's a genre that's so easily associated with anime because like a lot of the impact that it has been attributed to the kind of stuff that anime is able to do for it, whether it's like visually or in terms of audio, all that sort of stuff. But I mean there's still some good mecha, giant robot manga that's worth talking about. In fact, we have at least two that we're going to talk about, like two more for this like entire podcast series. One of those might be coming up very soon. Who knows? You'll have to guess what it is. It's a mystery. Till then, we'll see you next week.
See you, nerds.